Have you ever had someone who knew exactly what they were supposed to do and still didn't do it? Most leaders have. And usually our first thought is, how do I hold this person more accountable? Hi, I'm Patricia Stepler with Creating Top Producers. Today, I want to challenge this question. What if accountability isn't actually the starting point? What if we stopped trying to hold people accountable and started creating conditions for ownership? Today's episode, we're going to look at why accountability efforts often fail, the difference between compliance, ownership, and the 3 things leaders can do differently. So why does accountability become the solution? Most leaders, when something's not going right, they tend to have more meetings, more reminders, more check-ins, more hovering, more watching, clearer expectations perhaps, and more consequences. Now, none of those things by themselves are wrong. The problem comes when we believe that more oversight automatically produces more ownership. Imagine an employee has a report due every Friday. Every Thursday, the manager reminds them that they have a report due the next day. Friday morning comes, the manager checks again, and eventually the report gets done. Now, we might look at that and say, they're completely accountable. But are they? Or has the manager actually taken ownership of making sure that that employee followed through? That's an important distinction. If I constantly have to remind the employee to take responsibility, who actually holds that responsibility? Good thought in it. So let's look at this. Compliance creates minimum performance. Now, if that's all you want is minimum performance, then that's fine. Organizations absolutely need standards. You need processes, expectations, deadlines, but compliance is, what do I have to do? Ownership means, what am I responsible for creating? That's completely a different mindset. You could relate this to any time when you were working. For instance, I once had a job and wasn't giving clear instructions on exactly what I could do. And so if you're not giving those instructions and your mindset is, I'm only going to do what I'm told, you'd see somebody standing around and doing nothing a lot of the day. Now, somebody who takes ownership, like I took ownership, found things to do, asked questions, what should I do next, to get an idea for all the gaps that were there in the training. When you're personally committed to something important, nobody has to remind you. Nobody has to tell you constantly what to do. Think about this. When you have a child, for those of you that are parents, nobody had to tell you that you have to take care of that child. You had a commitment knowing that you needed to care for that child, to clothe them, to feed them, to change them. And you did that because you made a decision, and that mattered. Now, relate that to a job. Can you find that same way that you're taking ownership, that you're taking responsibility because you accepted that job? And that's what you have to do. And as a leader, that's what you need to show people, how they can help to claim that responsibility. So keep this in mind, those of you who are leaders. People may comply because they have to. They know there are consequences. They take ownership when they've decided it matters, when they've decided that it's important. So that's why simply increasing pressure on a person can sometimes produce short-term improvement. but it doesn't create long-term change. Second insight, accountability grows from ownership. We often try to change somebody's behavior without looking at the thinking producing the behavior. You see, behind every behavior has thought, and it could be learned experience, but there's some thought there. Someone can know what they're supposed to do, when they're supposed to do it, like that Friday report, and even what happens, the consequence, if they don't, and still not truly own the result. Because there's this knowing-doing gap. They know what to do. It doesn't mean they're going to do it. That doesn't mean that they're taking ownership for it. They're avoiding the consequence, perhaps. And here's the thing. Information doesn't create transformation. Action does. Reminders don't create transformation. When someone starts to think, this is mine, my contribution matters, I'm responsible for this result, I'm responsible for how things look, I'm responsible for that image, then their behavior starts to change from the inside out. When people choose ownership, accountability no longer has to be enforced. It becomes natural. Insight 3, leaders create conditions for ownership. Now, this is really important because how can I, as a leader, help that employee to develop that ownership? This is important. You're not just saying, just let everybody do whatever they want and hopefully they'll own it. No, leadership does matter. Expectations matter. Standards still matter. But great leaders go beyond telling people what to do. They help people understand 3 things. Why does this work matter? The why, as Simon Sinek says. People need to see the purpose beyond the task. That's why the why is so important. If you don't understand the why, the how, the what don't really matter. It's the why. Why are you doing it? And how does my contribution affect other people? You know, when you can help as a leader, you can help the employee to see how the connection between their performance and the team, the customer, the client, the organization, or the larger result, and how what they do impacts everything and impacts the bottom line. Then they'll start to take ownership. Then you have to look at, where do I have the authority to make decisions? Now, this is really big. Because we can't tell someone, take ownership, and then require them to seek permission for every decision. Now, early on, you may want to have them seek permission for a little bit of time, just until they understand, because sometimes, let's face it, it's hard to get across everything where a person can make their own decision. But once you do that, let them go. Let them have that ability to make those decisions. So, as a leader, you have to ask yourself, have I given the person responsibility without actually giving them ownership? And yeah, that can be a very different thing also. So, as a leader, sometimes the harder we work to create accountability, the more responsibility we accidentally take away from other people. We remind, we rescue, we follow up, we solve the problem, we step in. And eventually the team learns, if I don't handle it, somebody else will. And that's the exact opposite of what the leader intended. So sometimes our attempt to create accountability actually teaches dependence instead of ownership or independence. So look at what you're doing and think, where might you be carrying the responsibility that actually belongs to that employee or to someone else in the organization? So here's where I want you to shift your thinking. Old way of thinking is, how do I hold people more accountable? What I want you to start thinking now is, how do I create the conditions where people choose ownership? Keep in mind, compliance creates minimum performance. Accountability grows from ownership. And leaders create the condition where ownership can grow. So I want you to think about your organization, your team, or even your family. Because kids need to learn responsibility and ownership also. They need to be part of your family team. And where do you repeatedly remind someone about something they're responsible for? Instead of asking, how can I hold them more accountable, ask what would need to change for them to truly own this. Because organizations don't become stronger simply because people are held accountable. They become stronger when the people choose ownership. And so often you just don't see enough people taking that ownership. And when the ownership grows, accountability becomes natural, becomes the result instead of the management strategy. So if this challenged the way you think about accountability, or even just had some reminders of things that, as we go through the day, we tend to forget, and maybe this is just a good reminder, I'd suggest that you subscribe to the Thinking Shift Weekly and join me each week as we challenge another assumption that may be limiting the results that we want to create. And if you're leading an organization where you know something needs to change, but you're not sure the real issue is what it appears to be on the surface, I'd be happy to have a conversation and see if I can be of some service to you and your organization. So subscribe to the Thinking Shift Weekly, subscribe to these videos here in the Thinking Shift, and challenge the thinking so that we can actually change the results, where we are helping leaders create meaningful and measurable results.